The recording. Okay, so we are live session, Management 521, week 2. I'm going to be looking tonight at participation and assignments. I mentioned this last week. I think it's critical. You don't know what the end of the week is going to bring in terms of all of these issues could impact you. We saw lots of people who had some unexpected weather this weekend. And if you wait till the end of the week to participate, you run out of time. If I were doing this, I would participate on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then I would take the weekend to work on assignments. You could come back in on Monday to see if anything went on in discussions that you need to know about, but get the participation done early in the week so that at the end of the week you have time to do the assignments. Don't do everything on Monday. I cannot believe how many people do the majority of their postings on Monday and then try to do the assignment as well. I personally think that's crazy and a really bad time management system. It's important that you read announcements. Whoever just joined, please make sure your microphone is on mute. Always read announcements. I try to post those on Tuesday morning. Any class messages postings. Some people put some questions in the questions and concern thread this week. You might have those same questions, so make sure that you check that. If you haven't already done so, look again at the definition of substantive. And the grading rubrics can be very helpful as well, although the worksheets don't really have grading rubrics. Once we get into papers and presentations, grading rubrics will be important. Make sure you meet the word count requirements for participation. That is a minimum of 250 for an initial posting and a minimum of 100 for a follow-up or response posting. Make sure that you use citations and references. Do not list a reference without a citation. Do not list a citation without a reference. They're supposed to both be together. Google is a bad choice for doing research because it gets you immediately into blogs, site selling services, and shortcut sites, none of which are acceptable. Use your textbook and business journal articles. Those are your best sources. When you have read something, don't just report on what you read. Don't just provide quotes. Analyze and apply information. Go beyond the obvious. Share some insights that you've developed. Develop some conclusions. What does it all mean? What is the impact of it? And not just what you read. Use paragraphs and white space. It makes it much easier to read a posting. If you have an opinion, that's fine. If you have experience, that's fine, but support it with sources. Opinion and experience alone is not enough to be a substantive posting. Use more than the video as a source on video-based questions. So you had 2 video-based questions for this week. There's the one on planning and the one on Angie Hicks. Videos are your source material, so make sure you use another citation and reference. Focus on content. Avoid being just conversational. I believe this happened to me. And respond to at least 2 initial questions weekly. As you know, by participating in this session and responding to the questions that are posted, you reduce your required number of postings from 8 for the week to 6 for the week. And that means that of the 6, 2 should be initial question responses, and 2 should probably be response postings. So have a nice mix. Don't just do all of one type. Already mentioned this about the word count for participation. Papers give you a guideline for word count. It's been my experience that it's difficult to comprehensively respond to any question if you go way below word count. So if it says 100, 75 is way below because that's a small number. If it's 1,000 word guideline for a paper, then if you went 200 below, that's probably not too bad. But you want to go as close to the word count as you can. Follow-up postings, the best practices is to use a citation and reference on those as well and have at least 100 words. Papers and postings are rarely comprehensive with less than the word count. The citation for a textbook is Knicky and Williams. You have to have both authors. You add the page paragraph number for quotes, and that's for papers. Your textbook reference, I've given you the full reference for Knicky and Williams. References are listed alphabetically. If a source does not have a date on it, use N period, D period. Do not use the download date. The date on citations and references is for publication, not download. Okay, so I already said this. Plagiarism reports. Faculty get different reports. There's a new system as of October 4th, so if you were an undergrad and used Grammarly and WritePoint, there's a new system. It's called Enhanced Writing Resources. Points are only earned in the current week. Private messages are sent to help you, not to make you think you haven't done a good job, but to help you do a better job. And repeat errors and issues will cost you more points. If you get an assignment returned, and I haven't graded your worksheets from last week yet, I'm still finishing up a class that ended on Sunday. Do not just look at the points. Make sure you look at the assignment, because even if you earned all the points, there might be still suggestions for improvement, how you could do a better job. My last check-in on Monday night to answer any assignment questions is usually around 10 p.m. Eastern. That means if anyone's in Pacific, and Andrew, I can never remember which time zone Arizona is. I think right now it's two hours behind East Coast, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, we're 7 p.m. right now.
Oh, okay. So if anybody, Johnny, you're in Palo Alto. So 10 o'clock Eastern is only 7 p.m. for you. You still got plenty of time to do the assignment, but make sure that you have gotten any questions answered by 10, because after 10 Eastern, it's unlikely I'm going to see any questions. So if you have questions, you should do them early in the week or early on Monday. No, I'm not teaching a Monday night class right now, so I don't get home after 10. All right, so what I want to go over with you a little bit tonight are some resources that are great sources for you. In the library, and I've highlighted the library tab. It's not usually yellow. I highlighted that. And I highlighted 3 things: grammar tools, tutorials and guides, and writing labs. All of these are excellent tools for you to help you do a better job. So let's take a look at them in a little bit more detail. So tutorials and guides, it's filled with stuff. These are some of my favorites, and it's not an exhaustive list. There are writing and style guides. There's APA information. There's sample papers. There's tutorials on software. There's information on academic integrity. I don't know if this applies to anybody who's on right now, but there's a wonderful resource for people who, for whom English is not a first language. English has got to be one of the worst languages to learn because there's so many crazy things in English. So if that applies to you, that's a great source for you. There's also sources on grammar and reading. And so the tutorials and guides, you go to the library tab and you will see them. For those of you who have not figured this one out yet, if you are in Word, it has a citation generator in it. This can save you an unbelievable amount of time. You can see I've got it set to APA style. You can insert a citation. You can insert the textbook for this class. You put in the proper format for the citation, you put it in for the reference, and then all you have to do is go back and click on it. And then it's there for you. You don't have to keep redoing it. So this is a great tool in Word that if you haven't found it yet, go looking for it because it is really helpful. I thought I had more on the, all right, let me go back. The grammar checking tools I mentioned is now that grammar guide. Writing labs. If you have problems with writing, you can go into the lab and ask for help. They won't do your assignment for you, but if you have difficulty with writing, they will help you. It's live. There's a faculty member there to help you. Okay, so here's what I will be looking for when I grade your worksheets. I had to think of what it was, worksheets from week 1. Make sure you're somewhere in the 50 to 75 word count guideline, that you've added a citation to the write-up and it's not just in the cite column, that you put concepts into your own words and did not just quote from, say, the textbook. Use citations for more than finding quotes. At the graduate level, we're looking for more paraphrasing and summarizing than quoting. Cite the reference, textbook, and video. Write in full sentences and use spell check. So that's what I'm looking for from the worksheet from week 1. These are just some things that came up last semester, so I'll give them to you because I haven't done your grading yet. In order to is not a great phrase. It's much better to write to. In order, I think people sometimes write in order from, or in order for. Just use for. Do not write in cliches. Cliches are words that have no meaning. It does take up word count, but it doesn't add any value. Last but not least, first and foremost, easier said than done, each and every one. Those are all cliches. If you go into the strategies for success document that's posted in week 1 required, it gives you a whole list of cliches. You want to check for wordos, whether, oh, I wrote the same whether twice, whether with W-H-E-T-E-R, manager and manger, companies and companies, there and there. There's so many words that sound the same and spelled differently, so be careful of those. Very is an unnecessary word. The only time you might want to use it is if you're talking about a survey. That very important was one of the parameters. And superlatives are rarely true and difficult to prove. I just read a paper that said, this company has always supported its employees. You can't prove that. Or this company will never do this. How can you predict the future? So these superlatives, always, never, all, every, best, most, avoid them as much as possible. All right, so the week 2 worksheet. Use citations and references. Follow the word count guideline. Write in complete sentences. Avoid Google. Dictionaries, encyclopedias, blogs, websites selling services are not good sources for definitions. Use the textbook for definitions. And I'm going to ask you to save your file with the number 2 and your name. And I put, for instance, number 2 in my name. Now, last semester I said this, and everybody saved their documents as 2 with my name, then their name. That's not what I mean. So, Jerry, you might save 2 Morales. Andrew, you might put 2 Lauer. That's what I mean by saving with your name. The, for instance, is just my name. Don't use my name. All right, so question 1 says, select and identify a company. And I'm not looking at the right worksheet. Okay, so select and identify a company. And you want to pick a relatively large company for which you will find a lot of articles. You don't want to pick a small company. You don't want to pick a company that you would not be able to find any information on, because you must use sources. You're not going to be giving me the vision and mission statements based on your memory or based on the company website, although the company website is a good source for vision and mission. So pick a company. It says Amazon, Apple, Disney, or Home Depot. You can pick another company that's of interest to you as long as there's information out there about them. Question number 2. it says define 3 plans. It gives you the 3 plans: strategic, tactical, and operational. So in column 2, where it says description, you are going to define what those mean. What is a strategic plan? What's a tactical plan? And what's an operational plan? And then you're going to talk about what type of manager would create each type of plan, and use the selected company that you used in the mission and vision as an example. Now it says a total of 175 words. That's for columns 2 and 3. Column 1's already filled in for you. Question 3, evaluate the company's success in 3 core processes. It gives you those 3 core processes: people, strategy, and operations. And it's 350 words. So you're basically talking around 100 words for each one. 100 for people, strategy, and operations, with a little bit extra in there. The last question is to do a SWOT analysis. And I've written analysis in red because most people tend to do a SWOT list. Do an analysis. Break it into strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This also says 350 words, so that's really a little less than 100 words for the S, the W, the O, and the T. Evaluate the current direction for the company using a SWOT analysis. And my biggest suggestion, and this is for anything you do, read aloud before submitting. Now let me stop there. Does anyone have any questions specifically on the worksheet? Okay. What I wanted to add tonight is some information on critical thinking, because you'll be seeing that I say to you, use critical thinking skills, use higher level thinking skills, use more analysis, use more application. So I thought I would talk a little bit about what critical thinking means. So the ability to identify critical issues. What's most important? Can you compare things? Can you see differences? Can you determine what information is relevant? You know, we get so much stuff thrown at us that sometimes we're getting stuff that we don't need. So how do you determine what's relevant for you to do your job? Formulate questions. What questions might be appropriate? Look for patterns in information and try to explore new ideas. Solve problems. Probably the most important thing to effectively solving a problem is to frame the problem correctly. Because if you do not frame the problem correctly, you're probably coming up with the wrong solution. Think about alternative solutions. Don't have the solution before you know exactly what the problem is. Gather data, think about consequences, draw conclusions from what you found out before making recommendations. Some people identify the problem and then skip right to recommendations without really looking at alternatives, without looking at data, and that's not using critical thinking skills. Identify assumptions. We all tend to go into something with assumptions about what we think is going to happen, what we think is the right thing, but we have to identify our assumptions. We have to know the difference between a fact and somebody's opinion. Reasoned judgment. You know, we don't know the answers to everything, but we can use some judgment calls as long as we've done it with reasonable thinking. Recognize stereotypes and cliches, because those can get in the way of effectively evaluating information. Know your own biases, when your emotions might get involved. And if you're dealing with ideologies, you know, we often don't talk about religion and politics with anyone. That's because you're dealing with ideologies and values, and those are the hardest things to change. Here are some critical thinking skills. Analyze, probe, synthesize, pull it together, assess, discuss, apply. How do you take this information that you learned and apply it to more than one situation? How do you apply it to your work? How do you apply it to school? How do you apply it to life? The ability to question, create new ideas, infer, see one thing and then think how it applies to something else, adapt, prioritize, and sometimes we're asked to prove or disprove a hypothesis. Critical thinking is the ability to persuade others to your side, compare and contrast information, integrate information, evaluate it, and shift paradigms. A paradigm is a way of thinking. A shift in paradigm might create a brand new way of thinking about something. All right, so your things to remember as a summary for tonight. Use citations and references, use credible and reliable sources. Follow the word count guidelines. Don't use the video as your only reference for the questions. Avoid I, lowercase I drives me crazy. And you don't want to have too many I messages in your postings. I think, I believe, I agree. Be academic versus conversational. It should be more about the content rather than opinion. And I kind of like this little memory tool of AID. Apply and analyze, information and insights, depth and details, information and examples. That's what I'm looking for in both your postings as well as your assignments. It's much easier to keep up than catch up. So try not to fall behind. Try not to fall behind with assignments. Try not to wait until the end of the week to catch up with postings. The more you can divide your time up and manage your time, the much more effective you're going to be and the much easier it is going to be for you to get through the program. If you have one idea, you're not using critical thinking skills. So, any questions?
This is Johnny. So I apologize if I should know this, but when we pick our company and write the mission and vision, do you want that to be cited as well?
You don't need to. What you would cite more than likely for the vision and mission is the company's website, because that's usually where people get that from.
Thank you.
So if you picked a company, let's say like Starbucks, because I picked that because it's been in the news all week. Starbucks is a great company. They have a lot of information out there. There's a lot of articles written about it. So you would find a lot of great information about a Starbucks, and their vision and mission is usually on their website. Does that answer your question, Johnny?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. I see Daisy and Jean have joined us.
Yes, hi. I actually also have a question on the mission and the vision statement.
Go ahead, Daisy.
Is it okay if we basically just put it word for word what we got from the website?
On that question, vision and mission, it is okay to write exactly what you got. Because that you would quote that entirely, vision and mission. So that really is one of the few times you would use exactly what you found. Put it in quotation marks and put, xyzcompany.com if that's where you got it from.
Perfect.
Does that answer your question, Daisy?
It does. Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Andrew.
So on the for the strategic, tactical, operational planning, is that, I'm trying to figure out how we would find out that for our particular company. Is that something that we would, because I don't think that they would list that directly on their website.
No, they don't. And that's where you might find some of it in the textbook. You might also find it in articles about the company. And remember, I just talked about infer. Some of it is not going to be exactly out there. You're going to have to dig a little bit.
Okay. It was just our estimation then, I guess, at that point. So
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if you don't mind, I have a question.
Go ahead, Gene.
So as far as funding the company, and we define the articles in the library, also, is it okay to use Google Scholarly?
Google Scholar is good to use. I would the library's great, but I know some people are challenged with the library. I did do I think something last week on the library, but I think one of the easiest things to do is to go to places like fortune.com, Forbes.com, Inc.com. Those magazines have great articles, and those are great places to get information. So if you haven't figured out how to use the library yet, go to Fortune, go to Forbes, go to Business Week, Harvard Business Review, and that one is hbr.org. The Wall Street Journal, WSJ.com. All of those are great sites. So just because I say don't use websites doesn't mean not to use journal websites. What I mean is that there are so many websites out there that are not credible or reliable. If you typed in, let's say, Starbucks to Google, the things that would probably come out first are blogs, which are not acceptable sources, purchase paper sites, companies that have done work with Starbucks and reporting on what they did with Starbucks, and they're trying to get you to buy their products or services. And so the stuff that comes up on page 1 of Google tends not to be good sources. I know there's some great stuff, but a little bit deeper, but I also know you're not going that not much beyond page 2 of Google to search. So go to those journal websites. I think you'll find a lot of information there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay, so I've got down the attendees as Jerry, Johnny, Andrew, Jean, and Daisy. Did I miss anyone? I hope that this was a valuable use of your time. I will do it again next week. And again, we'll go over the assignment that is upcoming for next week. I don't remember what it is. It's probably the other worksheet I had in my hand. And I will also review anything about the discussion board. So if there are no other questions, I'm going to sign off for tonight. I will stay on until everybody else signs off, just in case somebody has a question they didn't want to ask in front of everybody. So good night, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good night.
Good night.